Members of the legislature, good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Schmidt, I'm going to ask if you would, for the purposes of this presentation, if you would be so kind to consider this application from the community that you suspend your 3-minute rule to allow me the opportunity to do a presentation on behalf of many people here in the public, as well as for the purpose of educating the legislators concerning some very important issues dealing with redistricting. Would you do that, sir?
How long do you think you're going to need?
I don't think I'm going to need more than 15 or 20 minutes, sir.
All right, we will proceed. There's a lot of slips that have been put in relative to the redistricting. There is going to be no vote on the redistricting map today. However, the item will be called. I'm introducing some amendments, and then the item will be tabled. But
thank you. Mr. Schmidt, if I may.
Okay, are you, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Schmidt, I do believe that there are a number of people that have put slips in who've agreed to, if you would allow them to yield their time. Are there any such people in this room? Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Schmidt, on May 11th, and legislators, not just speaking to Mr. Schmidt, but I speak to the chair for the particular purpose of understanding that I did come to portions of two sessions over the past couple of weeks, and was very disturbed about both the process and what did take place. I come before you both as a taxpayer in Nassau County, a lifetime resident of Nassau County, and indeed the product of public schooling and community support in Nassau County. The issues that I'd like to present this morning deal with issues that I saw that the legislature itself saw as being important when I looked at the Newsday on May 11th, 2011. On May 11th, as I looked, and sometimes I do glance at the legal notices, I noticed that there was an unreadable map with some 20 or more pages of 2-pitch or 3-pitch point type that were part of the legal notices, which outlined an entire map that was to be proposed and or voted on today. I understand that you indicate that you have given amendments and that they are on file in the county clerk's office. I have not yet seen those because no one, as far as I know in this room, was told that that was being done. Is that incorrect?
No.
And I just wanted to make sure, because the room does have over 200 people in the room. With regard to the legal notice that did appear in the Newsday, and I'm sure all the legislators did see every page of it, I'm not quite sure what that cost the taxpayers, but if you put that legal notice in and you are now not voting on that plan, there will be a procedural issue, I'm sure, that will arise, Legislator Dunn, that may very well be a concern for how the process will be conducted. I'm certain that the legislative aid, as well as all the legislators, will deal with that procedural issue. But I stand before you to deal with what is on the floor now, what has been presented to the community as of now, and what we understand was being proposed, Legislator Bosworth, now. What was proposed was, and I understand that you're going to talk about amendments, and I look forward to sitting here to listen about the amendments. But what was proposed was an atrocity. What was proposed was not a map. It was not redistricting. It was radical redistricting. It was redistricting in the form that made the Voting Rights Act essentially a mockery. And one of the things that I've done, and I put up on the easels for you to see, is an actual map that we would hope would be the type of map you would be able to present to the community through your hearings, and that there be more than one hearing. We want to be clear that almost all the people that I've spoken to in this room over the past 2 or 3 weeks do not agree with the process that you have employed. They do not agree with the fact that you are ramming this down people's throats. They do not agree with the fact that you have gone through a process of having one public hearing and not allowed a single individual to have a clear understanding on what the map was. This legal notice that was placed in Newsday 2 days late, according to what the law requires, is not sufficient notice. I want to be, okay, very well, and I hear one of your staffers saying it's not true, and I'll stand on my word. Now, what we want to be clear on also here is that with regard to what has been proposed, is that there are a number of things that did not take place. Members of this community stood before you, some 200 of them, and spoke and asked questions. Of the questions that were asked, the lack of detail and the lack of specific information which was provided was appalling. In particular, questions were asked about what did take place in terms of the evaluation, the creation, and the determinations on how the maps would be drawn. It was clear that the issues relating to voting rights was not considered. And how do I know that? Because in a telephone conversation that I had with the county attorney just on Friday, my questions could not be answered. My questions, which I raised to the county attorney and said, did you do CVAP evaluations for District 1, District 2, and your now proposed District 19, which should still be District 3? And the answer was a shuffling of papers and I can't put my hands on it right now. The purpose of the conversation was that we might be able to understand what did go into this before I stood before you to present. That was not provided. I want to be real clear also to the legislators on both sides of the aisle that this is not about politics as usual. It is important for you to understand that every one of you has your position because of the blood, sweat, and tears of the African American community in Nassau. Jackson versus the County of Nassau, NAACP versus the Board of Elections, Coleman versus the assessor of Nassau County, and several other voting rights cases, including the grandmother of them all, Gooseby versus the town of Hempstead, allowed for this legislature to be created. It was created on statistics which showed that African Americans were being kept out of the electoral and legislative process because of how votes were cast, that being racial bloc voting, as well as how their votes were being diluted. It is important for each one of you of good conscience to know your history. Your history is that this legislature, even though it was founded based on Judge Spatz's sua sponte determination that you were a violation as a board of supervisor of one person, one vote, that case was also a voting rights case. And that this legislature was created based on Section 2, and I don't know if Champoli is here, but it's Section 2 that actually governs it. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act that led to the requirement that where there were minorities and communities that were contiguous and compact, that voting districts be set up so that they would have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. That led to the creation of Districts 1 and Districts 2. We are at a crossroads right now. The crossroads is not only that it's been created right now, when it should be in 2013, but the crossroads is that the plan that was proposed by the legislature seeks to do three main things which give insult to the Voting Rights Act and indeed the entire community. The first one is, Mr. Ciotti, is cracking. And the reason I point people out is I want to make sure that you're hearing what I'm talking about. Cracking. District 2, which was a performing majority-minority district, was essentially cracked. By cracking, we're talking about the vote was diluted to the point where the voting strength was cracked in a way that it was diluted. leaving very little possibility for the minority persons in those communities to select candidates of their choice. District 1, which is now overseen by Legislative Abrahams, was packed. What essentially packing is that the majority in a legislature basically throws their hand up and says, we can't do anything about that, so we might as well put all of that minority population into one area, so that their vote basically loses its real value because they're all in there. It was a super majority minority district. It was over 90% black. That was not necessary. Then when we go to old District 3, which you now call 19, quite contrary to Shaw versus Reno and all the other cases that I can cite and probably boil the heck out of you, it was cracked vertically, separating community from community, Elmont and Elmont, South Floral Park and South Floral Park, North Valley Stream, North Valley Stream, in such a way that the growing community of the new persons which are migrating across the western border of Nassau County would be essentially prevented from electing candidates of their choice. That was not a mistake. And I cannot stand here in good conscience and say that perhaps it was done innocently. The reason it wasn't done innocently, because any person that knows or claims to know voting rights genre knows that those actions are forbidden. They are forbidden with regard to voting rights responsibilities, both under state and federal law. But what's more important about that is that because it was intentional, it is a violation of the Constitution of the United States. And that is scary to me and almost everyone in this room who calls themselves and being proud to be an American. Because each of you took an oath that you would uphold the Constitution. And when the 15th Amendment was enacted, and the 13th and the 14th came before that, and then the Voting Rights Act of 1965 became necessary because people weren't following the amendments, violence was done to every person of color in Nassau County. Violence that is unspeakable. Violence that should have never even crossed your lips or entered your mind, but it did. Because I stood there, I sat right there, as I listened to Mr. Ciampoli tell speaker after speaker that they were wrong. They were not wrong. They were right on. And when they raised issues, it was clear that they were being told, essentially, we hear what you say, you're wrong, sit down, thank you very much. And then we come into this chamber and hear that you are going to change what has been proposed. We can't wait. Let's go to the package that you have, because I want to make sure, because we'll do the same thing with your new map when it's done. You have before you a plan that says statistical evaluation of Nassau County by legislative districts. Everyone in I think everyone in this room got a copy. Everybody got a copy? If you didn't, raise your hand. Okay, they got copies. We made sure that everybody got copies of information. What they have is a one-pager. What you have is a 7-pager plus a nice, juicy Big Mac. And the reason I give that to you is so that, Mr. Capel, that you're not misinformed. It is important to me that you, Mr. Nicolello, and you, Mr. Triano, are fully informed about what you're doing, because I will tell you, if you violate the Voting Rights Act, I'm coming.
All right.
I'm coming. Turn to the package that I've given you, and it is the one that has table 1 in the upper left-hand corner. Do you see that in your package? Legislators, do you see that? Ms. Ford?
Fred, say that part again. And by the way, thank you for getting us copies and maps. That must have been really hard.
Yes, in your package, it would be page 1. In your package. Do you have that up in the upper left-hand corner? It says table 1. Okay. What you have there is a full statistical analysis of the current status of the districts. okay? And that's important for you, and the numbers will make you go crazy, but I'm gonna tell you what I think you need to look at. It has total population in the left-hand side, and I think the people in the audience have that as well. They have a smaller version. Then, if the legislators would go over 3 columns to deviation, do you see the deviation percentage column? If you go down that, you see what was being touted before as the constitutional emergency. That we have to change this right now. These were the words which were used because we have a violation of the constitutional rights of so many of our residents. Where you have a 12.5 deviation. You see that in District 2? And if you go down to your District 19, which is the old 3, you have that as well. You see that? Then if you go from there, because that's important just so you get an understanding of where we are. That's the snapshot. If you go to the next page, which will be your page 2, and for everyone in the audience, it's your next column. You see what we have put there as CVAP. Now, Legislator Ciotti, this is important to understand with regard to District 3, which is, I think, where you currently oversee and deal with as a legislator. CVAP was never mentioned by your county attorney, nor anyone. That's how you do a proper evaluation to see if a map, to see if your districts are in compliance with the Voting Rights Act. You look at CVAP. Legislator Schmidt, I don't know, do you know what CVAP means? No, this is serious. No, I'm not asking that to be snide. CVAP stands for Citizen Voting Age Population. The information that you are being fed dealt with total population and sometimes voting population. That is not an appropriate measure. That is essentially how the sale was being made, that this is a majority-minority community. It was not with regard to District 3. And in fact, District 2, which was a performing majority-minority district up until your new map, has been diluted so that it is no longer performing under the Voting Rights Act. In essence, not only did you crack District 2, but you made it such so that it was no longer a majority-minority district which could allow a candidate of their choice to be elected. That's important because those things don't happen by mistake. One of the things that I heard a quote, or actually read a quote in an affirmation or a declaration done by Mr. Ciampoli in the case up in New Rochelle, was that he said that when you dilute the minority vote in the pre-existing minority community that was a performing community, it is retrogression. Retrogression is a bad word when it comes to voting rights, because it means is that you're going backwards and you're running backwards. And essentially that's what happened with regard to District 2. So when you look at the CVAP numbers, if you go over to the column that says CVAP percentage, CVAP, NH, non-Hispanic Black, DOJ, and then the one, you see that? It says 68.7%, 59.4%, 34.0%. You see that? Okay. If you go to...
Fred?
Yes.
Then we got to give some time for people to follow the columns. I hear people not be able to follow.
That's okay. We're on page 2 in the audience. They have it just column by column, side by side.
So they should be looking at page 2, and they should be looking at percentage, CVAP, NH, Black, DOH.
That is correct.
DOJ.
DOJ. Sure. Yes, thank you for your question. Thank you. Thank you.